Hello everyone and welcome to this advanced Excel video by Intellipaat. In this video, we'll be talking about all the different advanced Excel features and their use cases. So without further wait, let's start the session. But before we begin the session, make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you'll never miss any update from us.
Hello and welcome to yet another video by Intellipaat. In this video, I will be talking about advanced Excel. To be particular, I will be discussing some advanced Excel formulas and pivot tables along with their implementation. And that is the agenda for this video. So let's head straight into it. So the first advanced formula that we have here is VLOOKUP. One can use VLOOKUP to find information in a table or a range by row. For example, you need to find the employee by his ID. So let's see how to implement VLOOKUP. Now let's continue with the hands-on. Here I have made a workbook named Advanced Formulas and I have a sheet called VLOOKUP. In this sheet, I have a data set that consists of order date, items, units, unit cost, and the total. I had just have here 4 items. So it's easy for me to find out the unit cost or the number of units ordered for any item. But imagine you had thousands and thousands of items that you need to find the unit cost of. So in that case, you can use the formula VLOOKUP. I have already done it here. As you can see, I have used the formula VLOOKUP here. Let's see how it is done. Let's try to find the unit cost of the item binder. So we'll go to this cell, put equals to, and then VLOOKUP. So the first argument here is the lookup value. As you can see, Excel gives us a hint here. So we'll select this. We need to find the unit cost of a binder. So we have selected this. And the next is table array. So the table array is the array that will consist both the item and the unit cost. That is the value that we already have and the value that we need to find. So I have selected from B2 to E5. That is our table array here. Now we need to write column index number, as you can see. So column index number is the column number with respect to this table array from which we need to find the lookup value. So as you can see, we need to find the index of unit cost. So with respect to this array, that is the third column. So one column, second column, and the third column. So we'll put here 3, and in the end we have range lookup, that is true or false. You can put true if you want an approximate match and false if you want an exact match. So we'll go with false here as we want an exact match. Close the parenthesis and put enter. As you can see, we have the unit cost of binder here. It is pretty easy to see here as we have only 4 items in this data set, but imagine having thousands. So VLOOKUP helps that way. Let's try to do for the other 2 items as well. So we'll put equals to VLOOKUP opening parenthesis, lookup value is desk, put a comma. We'll select our table array, that is this again, comma, and that is the third column, so 3, and we want an exact match, so false, enter. Here we have the unit cost of a desk. Now the same goes with pen, equals to VLOOKUP opening parenthesis, lookup value is pen, comma, table array. Then we have to put 3 as it is again the third column. Again we'll put false, closing parenthesis, enter. There you have. And that is how VLOOKUP works. Let's move on to our next agenda. So hands-on is done. We'll now see XLOOKUP. The XLOOKUP function examines a range or an array of matches and returns the item that corresponds to the first match. XLOOKUP can return the closest or an approximate match if no match exists. So the thing with XLOOKUP is that it won't work with earlier versions of Excel. As it is a newly added function, it will show an error if you try to make it work with older versions of Excel. With that, let's move on to our next formula, that is SUMIFs. So one of the most useful mathematical functions in Excel. It is used when a lot of conditions need to be applied while taking the values to add. Let's try and implement it. Now let's continue with the hands-on. I have a data here that has order date, region, rep, item, units, unit cost, and total. This is basically the sales data set that each of these reps made of each of these items, how many units they sold, what was the unit cost, and what is the total they brought. And the region here is also there. So from this data, let's say we want to know that what is the total revenue brought by each of these items irrespective of their region. So let's type in here item and total from all regions. Now if you were told to do this, you would have sat and added. Let's say we want only pencil. So you would go and search for items where there's pencil and add this all together. Now I have here 20 rows of data, and it might take some time, but won't take that much time as 1,000 rows would. So we are here to see how sum ifs work. Sum ifs, basically when there are many conditions to follow when adding up few numbers, we use sum ifs. So let's see how that works. First, we'll put in the items here. We have pencil, we have pen, and we have binder, pen set, and desk. So let's see what is the total from all these regions. First we'll put equals, then sum ifs, opening parenthesis. Excel tells us what it wants, so we have sum range here. Now the sum range will be this. After we select the sum range, it says criteria range 1. So I want to know what is the total from all regions for the item pencil. This is the range I will be selecting, but dragging will be quite cumbersome, and even though I have just 20 lines here, it's quite taking a while. So what you can do in that case, select the first cell of the row of the column that you want to select and just go with CTRL shift. There you go. And now it says criteria 1. So we want pencil. We'll select pencil here, close parenthesis, press enter. There you have the total from all regions, including east, central, west. All the sales that was brought by selling pencils is this. Let's try that with pen as well. We'll put equals sum ifs, opening parenthesis. Sum range will stay the same. We'll use CTRL shift down arrow and comma. Criteria range will be this. CTRL shift and down arrow. And next will be criteria 1. We want pen. We'll select pen here, close our parenthesis, and press enter. And there you go. Let's try the same with the other items as well. Equals sum ifs, sum range, CTRL shift down arrow. Next we have criteria range. So CTRL shift down arrow, comma, criteria 1. We want binder. We'll select binder from here, closing parenthesis. There you have it. And sum ifs, sum range. Then we have this, comma, we want pen set. Let's see, we have pen set here. That is it. Again, sum ifs, sum range, comma, criteria range, comma, we want desk. Where do we have desk? We have desk here, and that is it. That is how you work with sum ifs. Let's move on to our next formula now. So the hands-on of sum ifs is done. We'll see sum product now. Sum of the product of related ranges or arrays is returned by the sum product function. Multiplication is the default operation, but addition, subtraction, and division are also available. Let's see how to do that. So I have this data set here, and I have the number of units sold and the unit cost. Let's say I want to find out the total sales made. So for that case, I will have to multiply the number of units with the unit cost for each of these items and then add them all. But here is a quicker method. Let's see how sum product works. I'll just write here total sales, put equals to sum product. We have only two arguments here, that is in our case array 1 and array 2. For array 1, we'll select this and then control shift down arrow and select the second array, and that is it. You press enter and that is the total. If you want to check if it's the right value or not, let's try adding. So I've put here the total, and let's try adding this and let's see if we get the same amount or not. So I'll just put sum and select all this, and if we get the same number, that means sum product can be used instead of just sum. So yeah, we have verified that sum product works just fine. Now let's move on to our next agenda. Our next agenda is pivot table. Before moving forward with how to implement a pivot table, let's try to understand what is the difference between a normal table and a pivot table. It's very simple. A normal table is fixed, while a pivot table is very flexible. Normal table gets you a collection of data, while on the other hand, a pivot table gets you summarized data. Now let's see some of the benefits of using a pivot table. It is very simple to use. By using pivot table, data analysis is made simple. Data patterns are easy to find when you have a quick summary of the data. Quick report creation aids in making quick decisions. Now let's begin with the hands-on. Here I have a data set that is more than 20 rows that I used in the previous hands-on. So I have here about 43 rows of data, and it is the same data set that says order date, region, rep, item, units, unit cost, and total. As you can see, it'll be very difficult if you want to find just how many sales Morgan made. You'll have to go and look for Morgan each and every row one by one. So for that, we have the option of adding a pivot table. As I already talked about it, a pivot table is a very flexible table rather than this static table right here. So we'll put our pivot table right next to our static table. For that, the first step is to make sure that you don't have any blank datas in your table. As we can see here, no blank datas. Okay, next step will be to keep your cursor somewhere in the table. Then go to Insert. Right here, you can see the option of Pivot Table. Just click on it and you get here. As I've kept my cursor in the table, by default, it selects that table. Now you have the option to add the pivot table in the new worksheet or the existing worksheet. As we want our pivot table to be right here, we will select existing worksheet. With existing worksheet, you have to select the location. So I will click right here and it gets selected. We'll click on OK. And there you get your pivot table, and this is called the pivot table fields. As you can see, here we have all the column headings that we had in our static table. That is order date, region, rep, item, units, unit cost, and total. And below here, you can see the filters, columns, rows, values. You can add whatever you want and remove them as per your convenience. So let's try to make a pivot table right here. We'll select region, put them in rows, and we will see the total of all these regions, that the revenue they got right here. Well, there are other ways to find out what each region has made for revenue, but I feel like this is the easiest method. So let's see what are the items sold in each region that led to this revenue. We'll just add item here and you can see. In the central region, binder was sold and made a revenue of 5,000. Desk, pen, pen set, pencil, everything is here. Now let's say if we want to see who made these sales. So we'll just go to rep, put it in rows. Now binder was sold by Andrews, Gill, and you can see everybody's name is here, whoever made the sale. And just like that, if you don't want this, you can remove it. Everything can be removed as per your convenience. We are back to ground zero with just the region names and the revenue they made. Now let's try to implement one or two more use cases, that is scenarios. Let's say I want to know what is the revenue brought by each rep, irrespective of the region. So I'll remove region from here and add rep. You can see that with this pivot table, I can easily find out what is the revenue brought by each of my salesmen. Now let's say I want to see the area-wise revenue. So I'll just add it to my column, and with that, let me just move this here, and you can see we have central, east, and west, and we have the names of each and every rep, and we can see what is the revenue they brought in which region, and that is how it works. We have row labels. You can see a drop down arrow here. We can select if I want to know what is the sales made by, let's say, Morgan. I'll just select Morgan here and you can see that I have the revenue made by Morgan here. Now let's try to understand one more very interesting thing right here. Let's say I want to know how did Gil make 1749 rupees in the east region, like what did he sell. If I just double click on this, there will be another sheet popping right before this sheet which will show me the details of this. Let's try to double click right here, and there you go. Gil has made all the sales in the central region. As I have selected there, I selected this. How did Gil make this much in the central region? And in the central region, Gil sold all these many units, and that is the total. And that is how you get. Let's try this. For every rep that I click, for every region that I select, I will get a new sheet every single time. And that is how you can get a deep understanding of the data that you put in your pivot table. Let's now try to take multiple examples for a better understanding. Let's say I don't want all these rows and columns in my pivot table now. Fine, I want to create a new table that tells me how many times each region has been visited. So I put my region column right here and I want to see the number So I'll take the same region and put it in values. You can see the central region has been visited 24 times, east has been visited 13 times, west has been visited 6 times, a total of 43 times. Now let's say you want to know who are the people that went 24 times, 13 times and 6 times. Let's just double click and there you go. You have here Andrews, Kivel, Jardine, everybody, all of these people, they add up all their visits to the central region, that is 24 times. For each of these regions, you can find out by double clicking in, and every time a new sheet will pop up with the information that you need. Let's do for the west region. There you go. Let's see if we can get that information right here. Instead of double clicking and going who visited these regions, we'll just put rep in the columns part, and right here you can see we had the total of 24 times being the number that the central region was visited. Now here we have Andrews visited 4 times, Gill 5 times, Howard did not visit, Jardine 5 times, and that is how it gets added up to 24. If you want, you can remove this right back. Now let's see a few more things about the pivot table. As you can see, when we have selected a cell in the pivot table, here you can see pivot table tools and the pivot table fields as well. When you move the cell to somewhere that is not the pivot table tools and the fields, they disappear. Again, when you click it here, both of them will appear again. So this is the table here. We have the reps and the regions and the total that they have done. Now let's go to design, and you have a bunch of different styles here. We have layouts. So let's try going to report layout. By default, it is in the compact. Let's say we don't want the pivot table to be in the compact form. We can select any other form. Let's say we'll do outline form. You can see it is a bit different than the compact form. Let's see the tabular form. Again, you can see the rows and columns. There are lines made. Let's just go to the compact form. Here we can select different colors. Let's do this. Anything you want. We can create a new pivot table style also. But for now, let's just stick to this one. And in this table, you can see we have a grand total column and a grand total row. So there's no need to put both of these. So here you can see in pivot table tools, when you go to design, you have grand totals options here. So if you turn it off, both of the grand total will go. Then we have on for rows and columns that we had earlier, then on for rows only and on for columns only. Let's just stick with on for rows only, or we'll go to what it was earlier. One more thing, when we're in the pivot table, in the designs option as well, we have the option, as you can see right here, row headers, column headers. Let's see what happens when we untick them. Nothing is happening. Column headers. All the column headers, earlier they were like this. If we untick them, they go away. Let's see what happens with banded rows. Okay, let's choose another style. You can see banded rows. Alternate rows have been banded. All banded columns. Alternate columns are banded. If we select both, this is how it looks like. Let's just stick with banded rows. Let's see one more thing that is very useful for sales data. So as you can see, this is the amount. So these are basically currencies. But you see no sign here. Like there's no rupees, dollar. We don't know what currency they made the sale in. To get that, we have our pivot table fields here. We'll go to the values part, click on value field settings. And here you can see if it is a sum, count, average, all the options you have. But we want to change the format. So we'll click on number format. Here you can see you have a bunch of categories. We'll click currency. And we don't want any of these options, but we need to change the symbol. And we need to find the rupees sign. As you can see here, English India, rupees. We'll select that and okay. Now you can see we have the rupees sign everywhere. Now let's do one thing and try to compare this static data and our pivot table. These both tables represent the same data, the same salesmen, the same regions, the amount of sales made. But as I said in my definition, pivot tables always gives a summarized data. While on the other hand, the static table, as you can see, it's lines and lines of just data and it's it looks boring. It's very hard to analyze it. But pivot table, on the other hand, you can just pick here. If I want to know how much sales Jones made in which region, it's right here. You don't have to go add all the sales Jones made from this table. It's all right here. And that's it for this video. Thank you.
Just a quick info, guys. Intellipaat provides PG certification in Business Analysis and Product Management by ENICT Academy MNIT Jaipur. The course link of which is given in the description below.